morning. Welcome to Viewpoint, your program with personalities, politicians, and perspectives. Well, we certainly have a personality this morning, a gentleman who's worked hard for us on our behalf on the county board. Judy Kay is going to introduce him in just a second. Chuck, we always try to start Viewpoint with a kudo or two, and I suspect maybe during this snarky weather, Judith Kay, it might be just as well to give a kudo to the first responders. Anybody who has to be a first responder in this kind of weather, and with particular reference to the men in uniform out there, our police people on the highways. My God, people, slow down. I've seen people driving incredibly fast, and there's no way in the world they can control that car if it starts to slick. So use your head out there, folks, for goodness sakes. That's my kudo. Well, and my admonition.
That sounds like pretty sage advice to me.
Now, let's get right down. We have a booming problem in the county. Let's get down to talking about that. So introduce our guest this morning, please.
Well, we have as a guest today Chuck Ruben. And Chuck is from up at Emden. And you must have almost seniority on the county board.
Getting close. I think Bob Farmer has been on longer.
Is that right?
Yes.
How many years have you served?
17.
That's a good long time.
Tell my friend Tommy Komnick I said good morning.
Oh, I'll do that.
Get back up there.
Yeah.
Fine gentleman.
Well, I'm sure that this is just chronic. You've got a problem facing you.
Yes.
And you're very strong and brave to come out here this morning because you could be excoriated. My hat's off to you, Chuck. It isn't your fault. It isn't even the fault of this particular county board that the county courthouse is going to pot in a handbasket. The problem, I'm afraid, might be that we keep employing the Band-Aid approach. And anybody who owns anything, a car, a house, a pair of shoes, if you don't take care of them, they don't last. Now, we've had that courthouse since what year?
1905, I believe.
There you go. Okay, and so then the roof leaks and we hire somebody to come and put a little cork in the hole that's leaking. And pretty soon we got another problem. And we've kicked the can down the road long enough now so that from what I read in the paper, it sounds like we're going to try another Band-Aid approach. For thousands of dollars.
For thousands of dollars.
It's just more thousands after more thousands to the bad.
Yeah. Well, and we're trying a Band-Aid approach because it's what we can afford at the moment.
Well, can't you get some of this pot money? I mean, we're growing pot out here on the highway.
Believe it or not,
fast and furious.
Believe it or not, we do get some of that money.
Well, if we're going to promote sin, let's use it for something.
And when Cresco moved into that building, they made an agreement to share some of their profits with the counties, with a 5-county consortium. Mm-hmm. But there also is going to be a kickback on the taxes. When they get selling the recreational, there'll be a tax on that, and the state's sending a percentage of that back to the county.
Why do you think we're going to sell it if it isn't for tax money?
Well, of
it
course
isn't to entertain the populace.
Up to 50%. It's a tax of up to 50% on some of the products. So,
really,
isn't that special? Yeah. Well, there's a whole bunch of money to be shared among the people. I sure hope you get some.
So,
get a little, but not enough to do this project. So,
tell me, Charles, is there any real serious thought to tearing down our courthouse and starting from scratch?
Well, we investigated that because you got to do your due diligence on anything, and we checked with some counties surrounding counties that had done that. They don't necessarily tear it down. They generally it becomes a historic site and falls apart that way. Unfortunately, most of them do.
I just cannot believe my wildest imagination that anybody could seriously consider tearing down that building.
Well,
number one, if the money was available, sitting on your desk, to take, say, the county treasurer's office and move it off there someplace, God knows where, it would be almost impossible for the clerk to function. just the logistics. Logistics.
It just
of
works so nice
Sorry
that they're all in the same building and can work with each other. But a new building, other counties have spent between $35 and $40 million to build a new building for their courthouse. We've got a gentleman that did a study on our courthouse, and we can put it back into shape totally for about $8.5 million. So it just seems to me like that's the more prudent. Plus, it's just a beautiful building.
Oh, it's architecturally a
yes.
lovely building.
And it's something we've got going for us in Lincoln. And our list isn't getting longer of things that we have going for us.
That is
but
an anchor
it's coming
for
up with the $8.5 million.
That's a lot of money.
That is. That's over our annual budget for the county.
Well, I don't doubt that. How do the rest of the people on the county board feel? Do they figure it's worth signing up for this, or what?
We've taken the vote to put a referendum on the ballot in March, and it was unanimous. So everybody's on the same page after reviewing all of the information.
That's a raise on your sales tax.
On this, a half cent, 50 cents per $100 on the sales tax.
And that you figure is going to raise how much? $2.98 or?
It will produce. We already have there's several half cents on various for the county and for the city. They generate between $850,000 and $900,000 a year, which would bond over a 20-year period, which is what we would do. We would take that money and purchase a bond, and we probably could get that we could get more than that $8.5 million in a bond for
now,
that.
How does that work, though, for us who are uninitiated? Do you get that someday?
Well, no. As soon as the referendum passes, we would set up, and it's just like setting up a loan for your car. You get the money up front, and you pay it back over a period of time. With that, but you dedicate that money coming from that half-cent sales tax to that. You actually put that on the bond. That money's to pay that off.
Well, let's talk about that just a minute. 50 cents on the $100.
Yes.
Boy, that's not much. I mean, the electorate, the folks are going to go to the polls and vote through. They've got to stop and think a minute, not just say, "Oh my God, another tax." They're not going to do that. They've got to think this thing through and think what we're faced with. If you don't do something, you will have. We already have a serious problem. We don't have to talk about if we do. We already have a serious problem, and to let that deteriorate further, I can't believe people would go and vote no, and they will. There will be some to do that, but 50 cents on $100, that's just absolutely nothing.
No. Of course, everybody has questions about everything. We looked at surrounding tax. It doesn't put us over surrounding tax rates in other cities in the area, as a total. So that's, I hate to say that's a plus, but, everybody hates taxes. Nobody likes to pay taxes, but you have to be able to maintain things. And I don't know whether it's unfortunate or fortunate. We're in a P-TEL county where we can't raise the property taxes without a referendum.
Surely.
There's some, you can raise them a little bit every year to meet the CPI and that, but totally you can't raise them. And unfortunately, or fortunately, which I think it was fortunate, probably 25 years ago, there was a time the county was actually building up money, and they lowered the property taxes. Mm-hmm. And that was fine at the time, but you can't ever get it back. And,
you were acting responsibly, or at that time, those who made that vote, they were acting responsibly to the electorate, and they saw that they could do that, or at least they thought they could do it, and unfortunately we didn't look down the road far enough, and that's
and nobody has a crystal ball to see those things.
But our courthouse is I used the word architectural gem a minute ago, and I really believe that. I sit in Mama's Cafe and have a cup of coffee, look over at that building in the mornings, and I marvel every morning at how they put that thing up at the time they did. It's a beautiful, and then inside, the interior, that dome in and of itself is something to see.
When we removed the stained glass dome on the inside because of the danger of stuff falling into it and breaking it, and we've stored those pieces. But the firm that came and did that had done those kind of domes all over the country, and he said ours was fairly unique because most of ours has two sections of going straight up and then the dome, and most of them only have one. Okay. So he said it was really, a little different than most all the other domes they'd worked with.
648-5510. 648-5510. Our guest this morning is Mr. Charles Ruben, county board member. We appreciate the time that you board members take. People who serve in this capacity, they get a lot of coffee talk. That damn Ruben or something like that, That's unfortunate. Each and every one of you, whatever your shortcomings are or whatever your strengths are up there to help us, and so you're serving your fellow citizens. So we appreciate that. People are pretty quick to criticize, but they need to think if they were sitting there voting, what would they do? I heard one nitwit say, "I'll just tear the thing down." Well, just kind of offhand, just tear it down. Well, he had no idea what he was talking about, obviously.
Well, and I hope we've done all the due diligence that we can. We've investigated, the possibility of taking the dome structure itself off and just putting a roof over it, rather, which would be a lot more economical.
What a travesty.
It'd be terrible, and the cost of, you got to remember how high up in the air that is. It would cost about the same amount of money to tear that off and put a different roof up as it would to fix it. And of course, what they're telling us now is they can put a copper roof back on like it was originally, where it's got that copper color to it, and they would put it'd be good for 50 years. So that's a long time for a roof. And
that'd even see Jim Ash out of here. So your referendum for the tax is coming up in March?
Yes, in the primary election.
Yeah.
What do you hear from the people on the street when they say something about raising the tax a little?
Well, I hope that I hope we have allayed some of the concerns people had. We've tried this referendum before and it's failed, and some of the reason was it was. We had said, it was for the courthouse, for the safety complex, for everything. This referendum is just for the courthouse, for repairs of the courthouse, and it has a sunset on it after the bond is paid off. And we didn't say 20 years. We said when the bond is paid off, because sometimes those will be 2021. They'll vary. So we at the end of that bond, when it goes off, then that tax will come back off, so it sunsets.
But there's a lot more dependent on the downtown than just the courthouse.
Sure.
And if you decided, unfortunately, to raise that building, there goes your downtown.
Oh, most question. We have a referendum we need to take. We're past time on that. We have sponsors, and so we're going to recognize our sponsors right now. Go right ahead, Mr. Ash. Right back live in the studios here this morning. The program is Viewpoint, of course, each Wednesday morning, 8:15 to 0900 hours, where we try to bring you different guests from around the county and from around the state, for that matter, to bring you different perspectives and viewpoints. This morning we have a young gentleman who's been with the county board for some 17 years, he tells us. That's not out of my knowledge, that's straight from him. I don't want you to think I remember those things.
You just reach into the well for that.
Charles Ruben, farmer from up around the Emden way, served us faithfully, diligently, Serving on a community board, city council, county board, whatever, that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of thought. It takes some broad shoulders. It takes an ability to turn your head when somebody's not saying very nice things about you. It's kind of a thankless job, but thank goodness we have those people, men and ladies up there, who willing to serve like that. Currently, now we're serving a real serious problem with the county courthouse, and this is a serious problem. They have a roof problem, and can't continue to ignore that. And currently, they're working on a referendum come next March. We're going to be asked to pass a referendum that will. The amount will be, as Mr. Ruben said, 50 cents on $100. Folks, that's not very much to save that magnificent building down there. So, Mr. Ruben, what are your alternative thoughts? Is there a plan B if this fails?
Well, as was mentioned earlier, we're doing Plan B at the moment for just being able to continue to use it as is.
Day by day.
Day by day,
Yeah.
yes. And we spent, I think it was a little over $55,000 to have a ceiling put in above the third floor, as the best way I'm going to describe it. We have, there's a product on the inside of the dome that's getting wet, and it's, for lack of a better term, it's a type of concrete. They call it gunite. And it's falling off. There's pieces of it falling off.
It gets wet and it falls away.
Yes, and they'll hit that and not be able to go through into the third floor courtroom, so they'll be able to use those again. They're also putting a vapor barrier in there to hopefully catch some of the rain, and we'll be able to see where it is and do what a homeowner would do. We'll put a bucket up there. So, but that's really a temporary solution to
and that money's just been whizzed away.
Yeah, and but it is a safety, and we'll continue to use the areas up there then for a while. And
since you've been with the county board for 17 years, as you look back, was this problem evident before 17 years ago?
Evidence. There's always been minor leaks in the dome, and we have been able to. When I was getting on, they were essentially patching the leaks. They'd go up and fix an area that was leaking that they could reach, and the problem is getting to all of it. But it has just become too much now.
Yeah.
And it's just getting worse all the time, and it's a deal with, well, I don't know how to explain it. The gentleman that we hired, the architect that we hired to look at it, explained it much better, but it's just a deterioration of that copper that's up there and the fabric coating they put over it 30 years ago. So,
well, maybe that was the best they had at the time.
yeah.
But I still go back to my stand, whereby you have to keep at it. You can't just say, "Oh, it's a little leak,"
And that's the thing. It has a lot of things have gone. I mean, it probably would have been wise when air conditioning first came in. The courthouse. You see the outside of the courthouse with all the little window air conditioners all around.
Yes.
And if they'd have, rather than doing that, if they'd have put central air in there, it would have helped with the condition of the interior of the building. And that's part of the recommendation of the Mr. Walters that's doing the investigation, is to heat and air condition the building so that the interior stays in better shape, and of course fix the roof. And then the outside of the building also the stone needs some work. It needs to be treated and sealed, yes. And they're looking at the windows, and then of course they're also looking at all the possibilities of savings, such as the lighting, getting LEDs in, cutting the electric uses, and so, if we could do the work, it would be a tremendous improvement to the courthouse.
Well, I watched the Scully building being saved. Patrick Doolin and his association saved that building by sealing it, and that was considerable investment, no question about that. But they saved an architectural gem down there on that corner of the park, the Scully building. And if we just continue to ignore this and hope it'll go away, then it won't happen. And water problems are very insidious by their very nature, and it's a little bit here and a little bit there, and the first thing you know, it's a whole lot somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so our board is well advised to not ignore this, but try to solve it.
Yeah, and speaking of the board, we have a very good. I think we have a very good board at the moment. They're very diverse, and we have people that have some expertise in a lot of different areas, and that helps tremendously when you can talk to somebody on the board that understands the, well, I'll use the other representative from my district, Mr. Blankenship's an electrician, so when we have an electrical problem, what would you do?
He can understand that.
Yeah, he understands it and gives good advice as to the best way to do it. When we've got some people that are very good with computers and that one of the things we're doing right now, trying to save as much cost as we can. They're putting television over into the jail so that we can do court remotely. They'll arraign people over there. That saves a deputy bringing them over to the courthouse and standing there while they're,
which physically is a big thing, because if you bring prisoner A over to the courthouse, you got to have one or two that bring him over there, drive him over there, and as you suggest, they've got to stay in court. But now that can be eliminated if this project is completed. That's very interesting.
We've had the judges have been very helpful with that. They've made it all work and found ways to. Well, we originally thought the project was going to be about $30,000, and once they got done work and everything, I think it's going to cost $5,000. So it's a huge savings.
Oh my!
So and we hope everything goes through and works right. But just think about it. It's also not only that, but the deputy brings a set of prisoners over, usually 2 or 3. They go through court. He stands there and has to just sit there and watch them in court.
Yeah.
And then when they get done, then he has to take them back to the jail. Well, the whole time he's taking them back to the jail, getting another set of prisoners and bringing them over, the judges are just sitting there, and all the people in the courtroom. So it's just a tremendous amount of dead time that we hope to eliminate.
Now, is this something that other counties have employed and and been real happy about?
Yes. And it went as most things, it's more involved than you think it is. The circuit
Everything
court
is.
we have to get it approved by the circuit court and the head judge and all that. It all has to be approved, and you got to follow all the rules.
Oh sure. But they would know that if they had it in other counties and it was such a savings and such an efficiency, that it wouldn't be a bad idea to employ it in more counties.
Yes.
I'm surprised somebody hasn't called. Are we the only 2 people or 3 people, excuse me? Even Jim, 4 people.
648-5510. Somebody may have a serious question.
Do you care whether we have a courthouse?
Be polite to Mr. Ruben. He's serving us. He's in a way, he's a county employee. Not virtually, but virtually. Yeah.
Try and live on your pay as a county board member.
I was going to say he's not getting a whole lot for that. How many board members do we have, sir?
12.
12 county board members.
Yes.
And they are represented by district?
Yes, there's 6 districts in the county.
Are they about the same size?
They're equalized by population.
Good.
And that's why our District 1 up here is pretty large. It stretches across the whole northern end of the county to catch enough people. And then there's another district that's in the south, and then most of the others catch a piece of Lincoln to get population base. So.
Right.
One of the things I wanted to mention in regard to this dome problem is that not only will it have an impact on each and every county office, it now has an impact because records and so forth have to be diligently maintained and protected.
Yes.
And we can't allow water to get into our vaults and so forth. And if we continue to ignore that problem, ultimately that will happen.
I would hope it won't get in. I mean, somebody did a good job when they built the courthouse. They put a vault. I think there's a vault in every office right now that, that is a sealed vault, and so it protects our records. But so many of our records today are computerized, and but there's still a lot of paper records in that courthouse. And
by the way, those folks, we have a great employee basis, is what I'm going to term it, in our courthouse. We have some dedicated employees, and I ran into that firsthand not too long ago. I wanted to do a little research on some of my family, and a very nice lady in the county clerk's office, very nice. I've gone blank, and I apologize to her, but she just jumped in there and was a tremendous help to me. Didn't mean a thing to her, but she was very patient and just really very, very helpful. And that I think that's kind of indicative of the kind of employees we have under that courthouse dome. We have some really great folks up there serving us in a very quiet way.
Yes, you can. We have very good employees.
In each office.
In each office, yes. We've been very fortunate to elect quality people to their offices, and they've hired quality people to work in them. And it's nice working with people that care, and they all do. They care about the courthouse, they care about their jobs, and they do, therefore they do them correctly.
Yeah, I've often said, just sitting over a cup of coffee, we've got some, with no particular axe to grind, I just said we have some excellent employees under that dome. And they're there to service, and then by golly, they do just that. And
unfortunately, most people, I mean, you have to have a reason to go to the courthouse, and a marriage certificate or something like that is, and of course, probably most people think of it when they pay their taxes, and they either have to send them there or take them there, and that's not the most pleasant experience, but there's not a lot. Most people don't have a lot of contact with the courthouse, don't see it on a daily or weekly basis, but they see the outside, and that's what we hope to preserve.
I think go ahead. No, right ahead, please.
Have any people mentioned to you about just having one entrance into the courthouse?
I don't think so. I think everybody understands in this world the security issues.
We've gotten used to that now.
Yeah. And we actually have, that has been changed a little bit. We actually bring our employees in a separate entrance in the morning early. Before the courthouse opens, there's another entrance open, and the employees come in through that entrance. But it's only an employee's entrance.
But it's a security issue.
Yes.
I didn't know what the issue was. That makes
because there are a lot of nuts
sense.
Running around out there, and you can talk about gun control all you want, but if a nut wants to get a gun, he'll get a gun some way, somehow, and there's no way to prevent somebody from coming in that courthouse with it, unless you do what they're doing now. And this is in every courthouse in the whole state of Illinois,
and
perhaps building all over the country that way.
And something else that has, our cell phones have become pervasive.
Yes.
That's a good word, thank you.
They had to, the judges finally decided they didn't want them in their courtrooms.
For good cause.
Right. They, they go off and people, they interrupt things, and so they've actually banned taking phones into the courthouse, and so again, that's, you got to have security.
But you made it very easy for those folks who carry cell phones. Deputy there at the gate where you go in will simply take it and put it in a little locker with a key, and it's no big problem.
No.
Somebody's forgetful.
But I bet you get a bigger hue and cry over asking someone whether you can't put their cell phone in that box than you would over tear off the dome.
Right. I'm sure we do. Yes. And there's Because the people don't know what to do without them. I don't know what to
know.
do without them anymore. I've become very dependent upon my phone.
Well, it guides me home.
The whole world, with the exception of myself, has become dependent on them from the age of about 3
Yes.
on up.
So, before we get to the end of the program, let's kind of take a chronology thing with this dome. This referendum must pass in March for you to proceed. Otherwise, you're going to sit there and twiddle your fingers?
Well, as I said, we've got a temporary fix in. We sure.
But the word temporary.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is a temporary fix, and if the referendum doesn't pass, I don't know. The board will have to start discussing things again and try to think of either a different avenue or.
And each and every one of you are already thinking about that already. I mean, you're trying to have a go-to plan in case this doesn't work.
And
Call that Plan B.
Plan B, yes. So. But there's just not a real good Plan B without the money to do it. And,
If you had to move out of that building, I can't imagine how many millions of dollars it would cost to move all the documents, all the people, all the desks, and to where? The old Kroger store?
Yeah, that's well, and just we did do a temporary building. We rented a temporary building downtown Lincoln because the chance that we would need 3 courtrooms, the third floor courtroom, still not being used, and there are times when they have three sets of court going, and so we rented another building and they put Wi-Fi over there, and of course you've got the related expenses with that.
Yeah,
and
sure.
But currently, you just said something I may have forgotten. We don't use that third floor courtroom?
No, because of the dome and the situation it's in. We're hoping when we have that
Incomprehensible.
Plan B in place that we'll be able to use it. Oh, it's a beautiful courtroom.
It
It is. It just really is. It's
What's the
architectural gem.
status of the murals at this point?
They haven't been damaged yet. That's
Oh,
the fortunate
thank God.
thing. So, and I'm sure there's the Mr. Walters that we've hired to look at it is, into the historical restoration and that. So I'm sure in his plan there's something to, help preserve those, and if we can do it all. And
Mr. Ruben, notwithstanding our dome problems, which are really very, very considerable, what is one of the other problems that the county board wrestles with on a meeting-to-meeting basis?
Oh, well, it's just, it's just so diverse. And that's the nice thing about the county board. We do have diverse problems, and we have of course, every year we have to do the budget and we have to do an audit, and those things are pretty standard, and they go. But there's always disagreement on what you should spend the money on. Everybody thinks their project's more important than anybody else's, and
It's called human nature, I think.
I'm kind of surprised we haven't had a call, one out of the 2 listeners we have.
Yeah.
The county board has significant
Sway.
well, they have significant problems, and fortunately we have a group from around the county who are dedicated to running our county government. Somebody ought to have a complaint of something, but Mr. Ruben can handle those very nicely. 648-5510.
How many years have you not been able to use the big courtroom on
it's
3rd?
just been this past year.
Uh-huh.
And you mentioned we have our controversies like the wind farms.
Absolutely.
There's
yeah.
Pros and cons.
Yes.
I hadn't gotten to that part yet.
Yeah, and we're anticipating solar farms. So
That's what I understand. Now, will they be as evident to the passersby as the wind farms are?
I think so. If they're farms, they will be, because if they're farms, they'll encompass
Large area.
not little areas, but hundreds of acres in one spot,
Uh-huh.
and just cover them with those solar panels.
Well, That's a big decision.
Yes.
Because all those acres are growing corn and beans now,
Yes.
and that's quite a trade-off.
Yes, it is. But it also is quite a, I think it's pretty lucrative for the farm owner, person that owns the ground. There's
Well, he
going
doesn't have to plow a solar panel, I guess, does he?
Yeah, and they seem to be paying pretty well for the privilege of putting those solar panels on that ground. So it's hard to deny the landowners their right to make a profit. So
There's so many. Nothing is ever simple, is it?
no, there's a
You
Speaking
just
of wind
touch one
farms-
thing and it touches 100 others.
yes.
I noticed now out in Sheridan Township, right at the end of 5th Street and Route 10, that we have new impellers going up over there.
Yes.
I saw an interesting thing not too long ago that the folks over in Holland, the Dutch do it differently. They have cylindrical, like turning a 55-gallon barrel on the end to end, and it has slices in it. And so instead of having those big propellers up there, these barrels generate. So it's kind of an interesting approach, but that's what the Dutch are doing over there. They sometimes do things differently, and maybe a little bit better than we do. Do you have any other wind farms that are knocking on our door at this time?
Yes, there's one here in the Atlanta area, east of Atlanta. I think they're trying to get options on ground to consider building one. They haven't been to the board yet for, going ahead with it, so they're still in the very early stages. And that may or may not happen. That's one of those things you never know when they start out. Sometimes they fall apart, and we've had some that have never come to fruition, and such as the one west of Lincoln, it was in the works for a long time. I mean, so long we had to, it was such a long period. Things have changed so much in the time from when they started. We had to change the first zoning because it said what the towers were. It lists all the generators, and those have all changed in the intervening time, such as the ones at Emden are 1.5 megawatts, and these new ones are going to be either 2.5 or 3s, depending upon what they put up. They've just gotten more bigger, more efficient, and it's amazing. And the other thing about the wind farms is what it's done for some of our road systems. Currently, they've got 5th Street pretty well tore up.
Yes.
And with the wind farm, and the highway department negotiated with them. They didn't have to strengthen that road. They're using it as is because they gave us money that when they're done, then they're going to redo that section of 5th Street, which is a much neaned. It's been needing to be.
For
It's
years.
a plus for the board.
Wind farms notwithstanding.
Yes, and so they, I believe if I remember the figure right, and you know how that gets, as you get older, you don't remember everything correctly. But
Talk
they,
about that.
I
they
didn't
gave
know
us
that.
a couple. They gave us a couple $1 million toward fixing that road up, and.
When will that happen?
Well, it's not as quickly as we'd like. Unfortunately, it sounds like they aren't going to actually start erecting the towers now over there until April. And I know the county engineer was hoping that they'd be done by early summer, and he'd be able to start work on that road right away. But it sounds now like it may be late summer before they get done, even fall, and therefore to probably push it into the next construction year.
Well, the timetable on that. Do we have a call, sir?
Yeah, we do.
All right. All right. Well, just 1 minute. We get some headsets on here. Go right ahead, caller, if you're calling for Mr. Ruben.
Yes, good morning, and I'm one of your 2 listeners out here. And I thank you for bringing this subject up. And Mr. Ruben, I thank you and the board for addressing it. There are many, many, many of us out here, whether you hear from us or not, that would like to see the courthouse restored. not just the dome fixed, but the courthouse restored. And it's in our thoughts and prayers that will happen, that the referendum will pass, and that will happen.
Well, we appreciate that call. This whole thing depends upon the voters having the same feeling. If we don't pass that referendum, we're kind of deep doo-doo. Sheriff Landers, great sheriff, by the way, was disappointed that we didn't pass a referendum regarding our jail facilities. And again, that was peanuts, 50 cents on the dollar, I think, $100. And so we hope that the electorate will have the same feeling that you do. We appreciate your call, young lady.
Thank you.
Is she representative of more people than the opposition is, do you think?
When you talk to people, you find most everybody's in favor of it.
I hope so.
And I think there was some confusion on the last couple of referendums, and hopefully we
didn't get her tale told very good.
Right, and so hopefully we can explain it to the public as to what has to be done, what needs to be done. And I know we're, as I said, we got some technologically smart people that can use computers. I'm hoping they're going to get a video out that shows both the inside and the outside of the dome be able to look at your computer.
Good plan.
And see it and see the damage that's there. And so hopefully that'll get out and help convince people that there is a real pressing problem.
Our guest this morning is Mr. Charles Ruben. Again, one of our quiet, faithful servants on the county board. Governments, city and or county, need people who are dedicated to their working on behalf of their fellow citizens. So those folks of you on the city council and on the county board who work on these problems day in, day out, we thank you very much. I'd like to close Viewpoint with the same old thing, but I think it's very important. I really like to think about this just a minute. Be the reason somebody smiled today. Thank you for Viewpoint.